Have you ever wondered why many people suck at coding? Have you ever been watching a bunch of tutorials just to print hello world and being stuck between a thousand of errors and didn't know how to figure it out? And what if I told you that this was me probably about 1 or 2 years ago? Hello guys, welcome to this new video, and today I want to tell you the truth about learning how to code and how to get started learning fast and master pretty any branch of computer science. I'll tell you straight. The real reason why most people fail at coding is because they don't build project like application or website or even entire APIs, everything. They don't build project. And the reason why projects are crucial to learn in general is because they force you to create something that's production ready. That means that it's ready to be used from anyone without any problem or bug. So I create something, I give it to a strange person, and he can use it perfectly without any problem. And this may be seeing something that's useless, but when you create something that's production ready, you do something that you want to do if you are creating something only for yourself. And another reason why projects are crucial and better than tutorials is that you don't have to copy paste the code from someone else or from an online resource. You have to write the code from scratch, and you have also to think about how the things gonna relate each other. So how this component gonna relate to the another component, where is the database and where is the controller, and so on and so forth. So you have to do some system design, and I call it high level design. And this is so important because when you will go to companies or you have to create some more complex project, you have already a way of working that's more professional. So after we learn the basic of coding of something, so like a language or a framework or everything you want, in order to create our first project, we need an idea that is not too easy, that is not too hard, a medium level idea that we can implement with our knowledge. So we can create this idea from zero with the knowledge that we have. You can find an idea in several ways. You can search on internet. You can go on GitHub repository like Build Your Own X. That's a famous GitHub repository where you can find many project ideas, and there are for many languages. Or you can go on website like roadmap.sh. That's a useful website where you can find ideas that you can choose for your project. Finally, you can do a pretty easy things to do. You can go on LLM like ChatGPT, and you can ask them to generate an idea for a project with pretty the requirement that you want. So you can ask ChatGPT to generate an idea and wait for the result. And this is what I've done. And personally, I personally asked ChatGPT and found this one, a delivery tracking system with Java and Spring Boot that are the main framework that I want to learn and I want to master. So now that we have an idea, we need to create uh, a simple diagram of our application. So how the components will be related to each other, as I said previously. So we have to create a components for authentication, for handling some kind of actions, and so on. So I created this diagram, as you can see, and in this diagram I have a user, and in the user we have the user makes an HTTP request to the application that is this square that you can see, and the application as the first layer, that's the most important one, that's an authentication layer or security layer. And the security layer has crucial components like security filter chain or JWT filter and password encoder. They are the main components in order to protect our application from attacks, from hacker attacks. So we can authenticate our user, and then we have three main controllers. You can see the controller are the main endpoints that handle requests. So we have an authentication controller that handles everything about authentication. So handle login request, register request, logout request, and so on, and uses the authentication service. That's the main component. As you can see, every controller uses a service, and this is crucial, is the main key pair value, because we have a key, it's notification controller and the service that's okay. So we always have a controller and a service, and the service uses, in this case, for authentication service, an authentication manager. Authentication manager is a component that uses multiple authentication provider to authenticate our user, because we can authenticate our user in different ways, like with username and password authentication. We can authenticate with Google, Facebook, Apple, and so on. But now, for simplicity, we use only a single authentication provider. That's the DAO authentication provider that uses user data service. That is service that asks user repository for a user, for user data, and the password encoder. And then we have also the token repository that we use to authenticate with JWT, because I didn't tell you, but we use the JWT for authentication. What does it mean? JWT is an acronym that stands for JSON Web Token, and is a token made up from 3 components. Is a string, an encoded string, divided by 2 dots, and we have the first part, the central part, and the final part. In the first part, we have the header, so everything about the encryption algorithm. So we have the type of the encryption algorithm and some other little information about the encryption. Then we have the central part, that's the most important one, because is the payload. And here we have stored every data about the user, like user email, password, role, ID, and so on. And finally, we have the secret part, that's the part where we have stored the secret key that we have used to encrypt every part of the token. And this compact string is used to authenticate an user. So in each request that we do from the client to the server, we have to pass this token, because it's the key to access the application. And when we register a user, when we have to log in, we get as a response this token, and the token gets saved into a table, into the database, where we store the active tokens and the used ones, so we can keep track of which tokens are valid and which not. And we have now the user part. So once we have created the authentication layer, we have to deal with the real core of our application. So we have user controller and the driver controller, because user can create and keep track of shipments, and driver can see what are the shipments that are assigned to them, and they can set the shipment state of each shipment. So if I delivered a shipment, I can change the state of the shipment, because I'm the driver and I'm delivering the shipment. And so with the user controller, we have the shipment service. That's the service that we use to create and perform CRUD operation, that stands for create, read, update, and delete operation on the shipment. And we have the driver, that's driver service, that uses user repository to retrieve the user data, and it uses also, I forgot to add another arrow, uses the shipment repository to read the shipments and update even if needed. Okay, so this was the entire application, and now we have to start writing code. So now that we know how our application is composed, we have all the pieces to create our final application. So we can start writing code in an orderly manner, because we know which pieces we have to create our application. But what if I get stuck, or what if I have no idea of how I can implement a feature or a function, or how I can do something? This is a pretty frequently asked question, because you can use very different approaches. You can search on Google, as many have used to do, and you can search on Google or websites like Stack Overflow or Reddit that are most used website to check if my problem it has been solved by any other people. So I copy paste my error into a search engine and find for someone that has already solved my problem. Or I can do another thing, that is asking AI. But in both of these scenarios, you have to keep in mind one important thing. Even if I search on Google for someone that already solved my problem, or even if I ask AI, I have to before of copy pasting the code or copy pasting the solution or applying the solution to my use case, I have to learn by my mistake. So what I've done wrong, that is what does the problem is, what is the problem, how I can fix it, and then when I learn where is the problem, where I can improve, then I apply the solution to my use case. Because if you don't do this second step, you probably get lost, and the next time you have another error, maybe it's similar to the first one, maybe you couldn't solve it because you forgot the previous error, and you get a bunch of problems because you don't learn about your mistakes, and this is a pretty bad thing. So now we can start writing code. I created already the application, so I wanted to show you how I have built. So first of all, let's move on to the computer. So okay, here we go. We have our project. So we have said that we need an authentication section based on JWT. So I first of all created a security configuration. Security configuration in Spring is a configuration file where we define how the security is configured. So first of all, we need the main piece of the security configuration file. It's the most important one, and is the first line of defense of our application. We have a filter chain. A security filter chain is a chain of filter that follow the responsibility chain pattern. That's a design pattern where each piece of the chain is linked to the next, and for if the request passes through each filter, for each filter needs to check something about the request, and if the request satisfies the requirements, it could pass to the next filter. If it doesn't, the request should block, and the filter chain is going to refuse the request. And here we have configured up the security filter chain. Maybe I should. Okay, good. As you can see, so we have the security filter chain. We have disabled the CSRF, that's a protection for a particular type of attack, and then we have authorized HTTP requests. So we have to say to the compiler, to Spring, what kind of request we can do. So we can do logout, login, or register request, and any user. So we have permit all, so any user can access it, even if it's not authenticated. Then we have at /API/p1/everything. We need to be authenticated simply, and simpler is simply. So now we have to say that any request authenticated. So now that we have set this, we have to say that logout is disabled because we're gonna handle logout manually. And finally, we have to add a filter because we have a bunch of filter by default into the security filter chain, and we have the most important one, that's username and password authentication filter. This filter is for the basic authentication. As you can see, I have used it in a previous video. I created a video where I create a basic authentication system with Java and Spring Boot. And if we have by default, we have this filter to authenticate, but we need to add another type of authentication, and we add before the filter, because if the request is authenticated, we are authenticated. So we had this filter that I have defined here into GWT filter. Here we have a filter that extends this kind of filter, once per request filter. This filter is a filter that filters the request for each request that we do to our application. So we have the main method of our filter, that is to filter internal, and we have request, a response, and the reference to the filter chain. So first of all, we get the servlet path to check if we are on /login or /register maybe. And if we aren't here, we have to stop the filter because we shouldn't are into login or register path. Then we extract the authentication header from the authorization header. That is where for agreement the token, the JWT token is put. So when we send a request, we put into the authorization header of the request the token. So we have to get the header into a string, and if the header is not null, it is null, or the header doesn't start with this prefix, so bearer and the space, and then we have the token. So if it doesn't start with bearer or is null, we have to filter because there is an error, and then we have to extract the token. So we have to cut the substring from the 7th character until the end of the string, and we have the token content. And finally, we have to use the JWT service. As you can see, I have added it into the diagram before. And the JWT service is a service that I wrote to handle JWT operation. And this uses a bunch of different libraries, but I use JJWT. That is the most used library. And with JJWT, we can read JWT token, write JWT token, and perform basic operations. So I have created this JWT service, but I will talk about it later. But this is not important because this is a simple service. So if we have extract the email from the from the token, if the user email is different from null, so it has some content, and if the security context holder, that's kind of a session where we store the current user data, is null, so we haven't any saved user, we can call the user details service, that is the service that we use to access the user from the database, and we have to load the user with the specified email. Once we have loaded the user, if the token is not revoked, we have to get this value from the service, and if the service validates the token, so if the token is valid, JWT token and user details, so if the token is valid and is not revoked, we create a username and password authentication token, and we're gonna call it with this constructor. So user details, null credentials, and the details that we have to set, and the details with the request of the details of the request. And finally, we update the context holder to add the authentication token. Okay, so now that we have created the filter, I take a quick view of the service. So JWT service, we have talked about JWT service, and the service takes up the secret key that's saved and stored into the application. I can see it by here into application.properties. Here we have the secret key, and the secret key. Sorry, I have to go back here. The secret key and the token expiration. So we have some method like extract username, string token, and we return the claim of the subject. So we extract username, extract claim that uses extractor claim, and the resolver function that in this case is a default function. And then we have get secret key that returns the secret key that is decoded to a byte array, and then we return the secret key object. Then we can create a token by giving it an extra claim and user details, or simple by giving it the user details. And then we can validate tokens by using the string token and user details. So we can say the token and the details, and if the details stored in the token and the details provided matches, we are done and the token is valid. Finally, we check if the token is not revoked. So we take the token and find if the token in the repository if it is not revoked. and if it's not expired. These are the main method, but we can add all the method we need to work with JWTs. And now that we have talked about the authentication, we have to talk about the authentication controller, because we have an authentication controller, because controller are the main part of our code, because are the final interfaces that we use to deal with the API. So into the authentication controller, we have a login, a register, and a logout that each one uses a request. So we get a login request, a login response. There are a data transfer objects, DTOs. These are some classes that I have defined specifically for this kind of request. So login request, we pass string email and password, and to the response we have the token and the message. And for example, so we have to go here, authentication controller, and here we have the authentication service dot login and dot request, same for register and for logout. So let's go to the authentication service. So here into services, authentication service, and this is the main service, because it uses authentication manager that I have defined here into application config. Here we have authentication provider, authentication manager, password encoder, and user leader services are the main beans that we use to work with security stuff, security related stuff. And let's go back here into authentication service. So I have passed it by dependency injection. That's the main method to inject something into a class, because Spring Boot uses this method. And we have, for example, login. So we have authentication manager.authenticate, get email, and get password, we have the token. So we can authenticate our user with email and password. Then if authentication is null, we can and if the authentication that we get previously is authenticated correctly, we can find by username the user from the repository by calling get email, and with the user, if we don't found, we can throw a username not found exception that user doesn't exist, revoke all the user token that we have created previously, and then generate the token and save the user token. Finally, we can build the response with the builder method and create the response with the message user logged in successfully. And finally, return the login response if the authentication had got an error, because if we exit from this, if we skip this part, we can't authenticate the user successfully. Then we have register endpoint, where we get the register request that is made up from email, password, and role. So we have email, password, and role. So I find the username, the user by the username with the email, and if we have something, we need to throw an error because the user already exists, and we can create multiple user with the same email. Then we have to create the user, so create the builder, set the email to the email, and the password encoder encodes the password. And finally, we set the role from the object. Then we save the user with user repository and create the token content with JWT service. Finally, we create the token with builder and create the token with token content. So create an object called token and return a builder with a register response, because I created a separate object for a response that's called token, where we have token and some other data. We created this model here. We have a token, and here we have ID, content, expired, revoked, created at, and the user that is associated with. And we have also the repository. So let's go back to the authentication service, and finally we have the most used part, that is logout, where we have app user set is if user is null, we return a bad request. If it doesn't, revoke all the user token and response with user logged out successfully. If we have some error, we print it out naturally. Finally, we have the run, because if we don't have any user in our database, we create a default user just for security, in order to let someone access the application. Okay, that's it. Now we can go back to our authentication controller, because we have created this, and when we get the response, we return the response. So now, once we are authenticated, we can move on the user controller, and here we have the user controller that's secured only for user and admin, so drivers cannot access this controller. So we have shipment service that's passed through dependency injection. We define a handler for every type of exception, so token not found and shipment not found, and we return these responses in a JSON format. Finally, we have a home, so it's a test endpoint. Then we have get shipments, and return a list of shipment as response entity. And we use shipment service to retrieve shipment. So here we have a shipment service. Create this and I create this. So I put it side by side. So we have. Okay. So here we have get shipments, and we return shipment service get shipments. So I have this method that is get shipments and shipment repo.find all. Then we have create shipment, and we call the create shipment method. So create shipment method, create a new shipment called name with name, sender name, receiver address, that is an address object, a tracking code, and we use the code generator. That's a generator that generates tracking code randomly, and then we set shipment status to ship, because we have shipped the package. Finally, we build the object and save the shipment as a new object into the database. Finally, we call the assign shipment, because we have to distribute the load from the drivers that we have. So if I have 3 drivers and I have 9 shipments, I divided these 9 shipments through these 3 drivers. So 3 and 3 and 3. And this is to create an organized system. So I have the assign shipment, and we have the shipment ID, and I get with the driver repo all the drivers, and the list loaded is the minimum from D is the get shipments ID dot size. So I get the minimum, and once I get the minimum and the list loaded, I add the shipment ID of the specified shipment ID, and finally I save and update the database. So I assign the shipment, and I return a response called the shipment created successfully, else I have to throw some error, and I see some error. Finally, we have the update and the delete shipment. So update the shipment, and I have this path variable called ID, where I pass the ID to the request, and they call update shipment. So for delete update shipment, here I have the update shipment request, where we have saved every data about the shipment. So we have defined it here. We have name, sender name, receiver address, and shipment state. We can update each one of these, or only one of these that we have to update. So if I have to update only the name, or if I have to update only the receiver address, or if I have to update it all, I can do what I want, what I want. So I pass it into the body. I have to add a check. Okay, so I have to update shipment, and finally call the method. And here, if the request get name is null, we set name. If the sender name is null, we set the sender name. If get receiver address is not null, we set receiver address, and so on, to set each parameter. And finally, we save the shipment and return a response: shipment updated. Created the same for the list shipment, but it's more simple because we have the list shipment ID, shipment repo delete by ID. So we have to delete basically the ID, the specified shipment. So shipment deleted successfully. And then we have completed the user controller. Finally, we have the final controller, that's driver controller, where we have access by driver and admin. And we have shipment service and driver service. We have get assigned shipments, so we get all the ID list, because each driver is a particular type of user that has an ID list of each of the ID of the shipment that are assigned to him. So I get the ID list, and with the ID list for each ID into ID list, I add to assigned shipment an array list of shipment, a shipment service dot get shipment by ID. So I get the shipment from the ID into the list, and I add it to the shipment that I have assigned to the driver. Finally, return the list, and if it's empty, it can be also empty, and I return a list with 0 items. Finally, I have the last method, that is update shipment status. So I have this, and I have a request param that's called long shipment ID, and another request param that's called shipment status string. So I have the shipment ID and the status. So I print this for the bug, and I get value because shipment status is an enum, so I have to convert the string value to the enum value. And once I have converted this to the shipment state, and I have converted the update shipment request with shipment state, I can build an update shipment with the specified function in the service. And we are done. We have to see really quickly the admin controller that uses the home, that's for test. And finally, we have get driver loads, so I return the get driver user, and I have an hash map where we have a string and a list of shipment, and for each driver I get a list of shipment, and I for each shipment ID I add shipment service dot get shipment by ID, as I said, as I done into the user controller. And finally, I put the key value pair into the hash map. Finally, I return the response, so the admin can get the driver, the loads of the drivers. Finally, I get the drivers, so I can get the users of road drivers, and I can also get all the users in my application. This is pretty much simple. And now we are ready for a demo of our application. Okay, so now we can start of our application. Okay, and yes, we open Postman, and in Postman I created a group of requests. So first of all, we need to log in. So log in, and we have a password. So first of all, I created because we are using the H2, that is a local database, I created a simple set of SQL query, where I create 4 users. So a user called user with password, a user called admin with password, a user called Mario with password, and a user called Luca with password. These are 2 drivers, and these are 2 users. Finally, we can log in. So I have explained this so you can know. So I copy this token, so I copy, and then I can go here to the next request. I set bearer token, and I paste. here, and as you can see here into the header I have authorization, bearer, space, and the token, and the body is this. So I create this in Italian because I'm Italian. So P1 mittente 1. I created some street and address, and we can send it. So post, shipment created successfully. Then I can create P2 mittente 2. Okay, shipment created. So just to create a bunch of test shipments. Okay, then I can create 4. Okay, so now I can create as an admin I can access everything, so I can create, delete, and even perform the driver operation, so I don't need to log in and log out every time. But as you can see, everything works pretty fine. So now we have to tell, sorry, I don't have to modify this. I have to go this to get assigned shipment. So I have to tell, because if I am a driver, the controller retrieves the principal data and retrieves the ID of the data. But if I'm not a driver and I'm an admin, I pass manually the ID of the driver that I want to get the data. So I have to pass also here the authorization token, and I can send the request, and I get ED1 P1, ED3 P3. Probably I didn't create the P2, so P2, P3, sorry, P4, P24. Okay, now I go back here and I ask 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 5. But why I don't get okay, so now that we have P1, P3, and P2, and for the driver 3, because I said I'm seeing for the driver 3, but I say for the driver 4, that's the another driver, I have other 2, 4, and 6, because 1 for the first and 1 for the second, because we have 2 drivers and we have 6 shipments, so we have 3 and 3 for each one. Okay, so now we can say get drivers. So we can get drivers. Sorry, I forgot to API P1 admin get drivers. Okay, I have to paste here the better token because I didn't paste it. Okay, and then send, and then we have the driver ID Mario with the password and the role, and shipment IDs 1, 2, 1, 3, 5, authority driver, credential non expired, credential non account non expired, account non locked and enabled, ED4, username Luca, password, role null, because role is null, because they are driver, and we have authority driver, shipment ID is 246, and we have the drivers. Maybe we can get also the users 1 and 2, admin, role admin, authority user, and username Luca that has authority driver, and username Mario that has authority driver, because when you say get user, I get all the user of my application. Finally, we can perform simple can update shipment status as drivers.
A few moments later.
Sorry, because I have to say shipment repo.update save driver. I can say like this. save driver, and we have this. So we can get some shipments. So it's fire and to start this. Okay, so I can say login. Token, and then I go to create shipment and this is authorization. I paste it here and I say body v1 post create shipment send, then p2 2 and send, p3 3 and then p4 4 and then send. Okay, now we can check for get assigned shipment. So I replace this Windows V send. Okay, as you can see, and now we have to lead shipment with ID. We say 3 and 2. So 2, replace the token, 2 and 3, and if I go here and I get this, I get only the first one because I deleted the number 3, and if I get for the 4, I should get only the fourth user. So that's it. We created this successfully. All the API works. I fixed also a bug that I should have noticed before. Now the video is over, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.